With the experience I've gained over the years, as someone who observes the environment a lot, I've noticed that as drugs have changed, the atmosphere in nightclubs has changed quite a bit.
How do you begin developing clients and working with top-tier individuals?
If I notice anything dangerous or someone watching you, like the Richard Miller worth $1.5 million, I can offer a solution and you can help make it work.
No matter who is hiring you, even if it's a multimillionaire or a billionaire. If you're in charge of their security, you also have some authority to make decisions. Or are there profiles that don't have this?
It's a tragedy to walk along the beach, find people and take them out, and on the way they die, and that's unpleasant, very unpleasant.
Yes, of course, people think, no, private security is just for show, but of course, if someone is carrying 2 million on them.
In Ibiza, there's a lot of mafia that we don't exactly know, but we recognize them by the way they look, the way they act, and so on. They're watching the watch and asking, are there too many rats here?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of LA Factoria. Today I have a dear friend, a war companion. We were together helping out at the Adana in Valencia. That's where we met, and since then we've kept in touch. He is a person with more than 15 years of experience in private security, in evictions, and he is one of the highest profile professionals in the security world. Aitor Ferrer, how are you, my friend? All good?
Very good afternoon.
It's a pleasure to have you here, honestly.
Likewise.
This is one of the few shows that I have really sought out and insisted a lot on doing. I mean, he told me, but what do you mean about a podcast, man? I've never done that in my life. But man, let's do it. Do me a favor. And he said, all right. I mean, I insisted on doing this interview because honestly, when I met him, all the stories, all the experience he has, I think it's amazing. Well, Aitor, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, Aitor is a person who is currently 38 years old. I started in this world when I was 16 working in nightclubs, and that's where all of this started to become urgent for me. A little bit about how security worked with access control, how the artists entered the nightclubs, what happened before, what happened after. And with all that, little by little, I started to develop, I started learning, and over time I've gained experience. I've had a lot of jobs. And in the end, well, we've made it to today. Thank you.
You're a highly sought after professional in Ibiza.
Yes.
I mean, Ibiza, watch out. Ibiza, I mean, Aitor, how do you go to Ibiza? How do you decide to go to Ibiza?
Let's see. My time in Ibiza has several phases because I started out as a doorman. And for the company I was working for back then, there was a pretty important job left, which was the Bora. And that's where I landed in Ibiza to be able to solve everything that was going on in that club because these people were, let's say, to put it bluntly, cleaning up the clubs. Because back then, in 2006, there were 800 fights per month. It was just crazy what was happening there. So that company focused on cleaning up, and I got to know the island thanks to the service and what happened at the Bora.
So they hire you to clean up. I want to define clean up. Do you mean to fix the mess, right?
Fix that nightclub. Every day there were fights, stabbings. They even broke the bars. They did all kinds of things and didn't know how to control it. So the company I worked for was an expert, let's say, in solving that kind of problem. And the owner of Bora hired this company, and this company brought me and a group of about 8 more people, so that during the summer we could stop all that and somehow bring the club back to normal so people could enjoy themselves and not have to watch fights all day.
Question, what protocols did you implement to fix that mess? Because many times in security, there are people who think that the bouncers sometimes abuse the little bit of power they have. I also consider myself in that situation and think if you lack control and self-mastery, inside this club with 500, 200, 1,000 drunk people, things can get out of hand.
Look, it's like this. We have to understand that Bora wasn't just a club. Bora was like a beach club, and you could get in from 500 different places. So it wasn't easy because first you had to identify groups, because most of them were English and German, and figure out a little bit what was going on in that place. Why were there fights? What groups were involved? If they were hooligans, if they weren't hooligans, if they were just regular people, if they were bachelor parties. And because we didn't start the fights, our only job was to stop them and keep away the people who came with aggressive intentions so they wouldn't start another fight. For example, I mean, protocol, little by little, we did start to have one, but first we had to
set up access control.
Run a very good access control to keep track. Why? Because now let me tell you, maybe you don't, But people who know Ibiza well and really love the island, they know Bora very well. And they know how it used to be. And that was a hot spot. That was the beach. I mean, how do you limit people from entering a beach? It was impossible. Besides, there were glass bottles, there were tables, chairs, the sun loungers, and there were a lot of dangerous objects that could be used against us.
So you actually saw some real atrocities there?
Unfortunately, many. Unfortunately, it was 4 years because the first and second were very tough, and so were the third and fourth. That's when people finally understood how things worked, that you couldn't do that anymore, and word started to spread. And by the third and fourth year, but the first and second, that was like my military service.
And what did you have to do? I mean, what actions, the most serious ones or the toughest things you had to do so that people would understand that it wasn't possible there? Smash the bar, break bottles, start conflicts, start fights.
Let's see.
It's just that, of course, I know a little, but I'd like the audience to understand what kind of violence.
You're used to it. Yeah, let's see. These are things that people won't really understand because you have to be there and see the violence they use and the way they use it and the abuse they want to inflict. So once you see that context, then you kind of have to match their strength because you have to stand up for yourself. That a bunch of English guys, 6'3" and 250 pounds each, would do 25. You can't stop that by talking, obviously, not even as a joke. And you can't spend all day fighting either, because in the end, justice works both ways. You could end up in jail, exactly, you know? So over time, and with very good, especially with very good professionals, because honestly, I didn't have just any kind of teammates. We were pretty professional people with a lot of experience. I was young, you know? But the 8 or 9 I went with were warriors, and with tricks from some and from others, experiences from some and from others. In the end, we were able to work things out. But like I said, unfortunately, by evening out the forces,
I mean, you had to confront them many times, so many times. It was an all-out battle between the doormen and them until they realized that the doormen were a formidable force.
You tell us, maybe there were 20 or 30 fights a day, and one would start on one corner. And while that was happening, others were starting on another corner. And maybe those two fights would get mixed up in another fight, and sometimes all those fights would just clear out because the drugs back then weren't like they are now, and people would go really crazy. That's something I've learned over time, paying attention to how nightlife works. It's true, depending on what kind of drugs are being used, the environment becomes more or less hostile.
I have a question. I have a theory that in the nightlife scene, music, reggaeton in particular, makes people act more aggressively.
Because of the type of drug that's being used?
And what kind of drug?
Is it cocaine and alcohol? For me,
cocaine and alcohol are what make people become?
It makes people, the nervous system, go crazy. And they become more irritable, more violent. They have less patience and get into more confrontations because of the mix of those two drugs, because in the end, alcohol is a drug. How interesting. These days in Ibiza, there are hardly any fights, since ketamine is the most commonly used drug.
Yes, people go there kind of.
They go half asleep, they're out of it, they're half asleep. I mean, you touch them and they barely even notice. They're in another world and thinking about other things.
And for the goalkeepers, do you prefer it?
Well, unfortunately, things go much better at night. Yes, it's calmer because people aren't looking for confrontation. They're not looking for trouble. They're not nervous. I mean, they're not agitated. They're relaxed because in the end, we all know what ketamine is, and they're very relaxed.
It's horse anesthesia, right?
More or less, yeah, because there's also Tusi. There are several designer drugs that mix a little bit of that substance. And with my years of experience, because I'm someone who observes the environment a lot, the people at my job have taught me to pay close attention to all the gestures that happen in that place. I've noticed that as drugs have changed, the atmosphere in nightclubs has changed a lot too.
And Ibiza is practically indistinguishable from drugs. I mean, there are two things that go hand in hand.
Unfortunately, yes. Unfortunately, that's the reputation that surrounds the island, which is the best nightclubs in the world, the best parties in the world, the best DJs in the world, the most handsome guys, the most beautiful girls, the posing. Well, in the end, all of that leads to drugs being a big part of the night and the day, because in the end, we all know Ibiza. And in the end, it gets out of hand for them.
And they keep going for 3 days out there and then
because they connect with after villas and other things. There are a lot of things that come together and make the night long, endless, and very abusive in that environment.
So let's go back a bit to how you established yourself as one of the elite private security guards. There at Bora Bora, what comes next? How do you begin building your own client base and start working with top-tier clients?
Look, this comes because, of course, Bora Bora, once it really shaped me. Bora Bora gave me a lot of experience. It gave me a name. Because in the end, at night, being able to have lived through that, being able to have stopped that, and being able to have the badge of I was one of those who stopped that madness. In the end, it gives you a bit of a name. It places you within this, let's say, within this society of people who work in the nightlife world. Doorman and private security are all closely connected. What happens next? I make a name for myself with that as a doorman, because over time as a doorman I start to establish myself, and the company sends me to more well-known nightclubs with more or less problems, but bigger clubs little by little. 2 or 3 years after Bora ended, I have a great friendship with Rafa Mora and Yabo Hermida, and they open a nightclub in Playa de Alba. Of course, they name it La Mora and Justo. I was working as head of security for a shopping center on the border of La Junquera, which I was in charge of. Well, basically making sure that all the money and everything that came into the shopping center was strictly controlled for the owners. So they asked me to do them the favor of being the head of security at that nightclub, and that's exactly where I met them. One day they bring in Kiko for a gig, and that's when I start to see that this is a great opportunity. Well, Kiko, well, I handle the gig for him. We set up an awesome protocol. We close off the street. We talk to the police. We get him cars. We set up a system so he can go. The club was small and poorly arranged, making everything chaotic. We had to move him around to keep him comfortable and avoid people bothering him. We set up a kind of protocol, and Kiko was very happy with it. And when the gig was over, he was the one who made me go to the hotel and said, hey, how did you do this? Who taught you? This is the first time I've been in a club and people haven't bothered me or made me feel uncomfortable. I was able to move around calmly. There was a crowd that was more than usual, and I was still able to move around perfectly. I went to the bathroom and it was empty. I went out and the car was right at the door. I mean, how the hell do you do that? So he insisted that I do that for him at every gig. And from there is when I started to, let's say, become a bit more professional and have a tool or a client I could work with. He really needed that kind of thing to be part of his daily routine.
So, was that your first experience working as private security for high profile figures, for well known people who really need someone to be with them 24/7?
He was coming out of Survivors. He was in the spotlight. So wherever we went, people would bother him, hassle him, photos, people who supported him, people who were against him. Because also Kiko's time had quite a few episodes, especially because of the situation with his mother and all that. There were great times and times when people disliked him. And that's why, like I said, at every moment we had to do different things. But that also gives me, or gives Kiko, a doctorate and 7 master's degrees. Because his whole career, which has been 10, 11 years, everything I've learned, everything I've had to do with him has helped me then to later be able to take it to other places. Because I dealt with paparazzi, dealt with fans, dealt with people who were against him. I dealt with people who were against his mother, against Julian. So I dealt with many elements that I had to know how to dissuade in many ways.
I understand perfectly. So what you do here is, do you graduate from the university? Kiko Rivera, let's say.
For me, yes, because it gives me a lot of experience. It gets me into the best nightclubs, the worst ones, the best towns, the best festivals. I mean, it gives me, let's say, an experience where my skills or my way of working are pushed to the limit. To be able to get a really good performance and achieve the goal of getting in, getting out, a perfect gig, no trouble, no aggression, and the hotel.
And from there you transition. From there you transition to providing this particular service to a lot more people of this caliber and at this right level.
I leave, let's say that's after 8 or 9 years of being with Kiko. That's when, with a friend I had, he offers me to go back to the island, to do what I do with Kiko. Because there are a lot of people there who need this kind of service. And with the experience I have, the stature I have, and the age I am, it would be a very good option. So even while working with Kiko, I moved to the island to do this. And with acquaintances and friends who stayed from the time I was at the Bora, I meet with them again, and they are the ones who get me started, like offering services. Because in the end, I start working for, like everything in life, you can't just show up and pray to the saint. I start working for people who begin to trust me because of everything I brought with me. I have a client who comes in, this gentleman, I'm not sure who he is, so I could provide services to those people.
What kind of client hires private security in Ibiza? I mean, or are there several types? Let's talk a little about them here. I also wanted to ask you another question. Let's talk about the profiles and also about the unwritten rule of private security. You're like a tomb, it's like a priest in the confessional, you can't talk about yourself.
But go and keep quiet. You have to take that to heart if you don't fit into this world. Because what a client wants most is privacy. Because with them, you're going to see things, you're going to experience things, and you're going to go to places where obviously they don't want anyone to know. Because everyone has their privacy, and it's very difficult to do something when you bring someone who might snitch, like if you have a wife and you go to see prostitutes.
What happens?
A lot, of course, of course, of course. Normally, nobody there finds out, not even Christ, and you won't be the one to reveal it. It doesn't make sense.
Because they hired you not just for protection, but to be a vault.
You have to be a vault. It's a fundamental value in this kind of work. See or go and keep quiet. This is something I was taught since I was very little, because I have a godfather who also taught me how to get into all of this. And the golden rule is see or go and keep quiet, see or go and keep quiet, see or go and keep quiet. I mean, until the grave. With Kiko, I'll take things to the grave. With other clients, I'll take things to the grave, even if they torture me or whatever. Even television has offered me 300,000 to 400,000 euros to betray Kiko. And I preferred to keep living with my little €1,000 salary and keep my values in place.
Damn, you see? I mean, what bastards, right? The television?
Yeah, they're real sons of bitches. I mean, to be clear, they play really dirty because I've experienced it firsthand. In many situations, they play really dirty.
And Hector, how do you transition from handling lower profile people to higher profile ones? Since I know exactly what kind of people you've managed.
Well, with experience and word of mouth from those same clients, because in the end, you get a higher profile client, and that client is the one who introduces you to his friend, to his acquaintance, or at a meeting they have in Geneva. What are they doing there? I'm heading to Ibiza. If you want a worry-free trip, contact this gentleman. They themselves are the ones who take me from one place to another, with their acquaintances, with their friends, or with people they want to impress for some reason. And one way to make a good impression is, you're going to Ibiza, call this gentleman. And from there, I've gotten to know a much wider variety of people, from businessmen to people who really needed to be well accompanied on the island.
Yes, and there you can find everyone from politicians to soccer players. What kind of person do you like most, and which do you like least? Maybe not dislike, though.
That's the word.
Which type of person causes the most problems?
The one who, let's say, doesn't have money and instead of wanting security wants a thug. You have to understand that my service is neither cheap nor expensive, but we can say you can save up, you can afford it. But I'm not your thug. I'm not like a trained dog that when something or someone doesn't work well, I'm your tool, obviously. So that kind of profile, that kind of people who act like that are the ones we always try to avoid, because in the end, I'm nobody's thug.
I always say a phrase to refer to the dynamics between men and women. Women expect men to protect them, and at the same time nowadays they don't accept men having even the slightest bit of authority over them. I want to extrapolate this concept to private security. No matter who is hiring you, even if it's a multimillionaire or billionaire, if you're responsible for their security, you also have a certain degree of authority when it comes to making decisions. Or are there people who don't accept this?
Well, there are all kinds of people, but really, now that you brought up the topic of the millionaire, who is the one who really values this more and truly understands, because of their education and daily life, that security is very important? It's like an investment, not an expense, because the moment you see security as an investment, that's when you really benefit from it. When you see it as an expense, that's when everything security does bothers you, because you see the money being spent and think it's useless. So when a person with that profile hires you, they know why they're hiring you. And you, in the conversations beforehand, because it's not just, come to my house at 6, wait downstairs and we'll go. No, there's no communication, there are interviews, there's a way of working, and that's where it's defined. Defined in what? At certain moments, there are even these signals. I mean, when I'm with you and we're together, because, of course, your privacy is essential, so I have to keep a certain distance from you. I can't be here all the time, so there are signals. You and I have already agreed beforehand, before me. They let me know how you feel, how you don't feel, what you need or what you don't, because that's what I'm here for. I'm not just here for you to invite me to dinner, travel on your yacht, or sit in your private jet, am I? I'm here so that whenever you feel uncomfortable, I can provide you with the service, or whenever I see something that could bring you danger, or is there someone watching you, the Richard Miller worth $1.5 million, to provide a solution and have your help making it effective?
Of course, because the kind of person who hires you is, well, people think, right, that private security is just for show. But of course, if someone is carrying 2 million on them,
There are a lot of people like that.
there are a lot, and well, there are a lot within the world you move in, but proportionally, there aren't that many. But at the end of the day, they're people who, if someone robs them, they've lost their assets.
A careless mistake. I mean, even if you don't believe it, there are people who, like you said, to carry 2 million or 1 million with them, wear a jacket worth 20,000 euros. You have to be on top of any carelessness. I mean, you have to pay very close attention to the client, not just to their surroundings, but to them personally. Their phone. There's a lot of money in their phone. They can't lose their phone.
Not even as a joke.
Sure, their credit cards and wallet. There are many factors. You're there, not just for the one who's watching, but you have to watch him to see how careless he is. Because at some point when he feels safe, he relaxes, because that's why he hires security, to be relaxed and not have to be on alert himself and all that. So in that environment, they relax and you have to be there. That's when you have to be the most alert. Where does he leave his phone? Where is his wallet? Check the watch every 3 minutes. Every 3 minutes, you have to be watching when they're wearing a watch, because sometimes they don't wear one, okay? Or nowadays, there are little chains that you can't even see, maybe worth 50,000 euros. They're little chains that you think, what chain? I wouldn't need to pay my rent for 5 years, you know? So you need to watch more details since he has relaxed. And from that point on, that's when you have to increase the intensity of your work, because that's when you're making sure he achieves the goal he hired you for. When he relaxes, then you have to be even more attentive than when he's not relaxed.
That is, this is also important. Have you agreed on when he has to set his mind aside and go on autopilot and follow you in case of danger? I mean, that's set, right?
Always, especially from those who trust your services. People just showing off usually don't pay much attention to you, right?
Tell me about an experience where you had to say, hey, we better get out of here, and they told you.
When I see, for example, that's what I'm telling you, the typical guy who now makes a bit of music, earns a little money, and shows off a lot and all that. In Ibiza, there's a lot of mafia that we don't really know, but we recognize them by the way they look, the way they act, and all that. And they're watching the watch, for example, and saying, hey, there are too many rats in here. Either we leave, or you give me the watch and make it disappear, because the watch has to disappear from here, or I'll do it myself. Will it disappear on its own, or will they make it disappear and cause a problem? Nothing happens, and when the clock chimes, it disappears.
That's no longer your responsibility.
Of course. So when you're already letting the client know that something isn't going well, that they have to be responsible for what's happening, and they have to let what they've hired do its job and trust in the services they've contracted. And if they say it doesn't matter, then you ask, well, what am I doing here?
Of course, you're not there to die for them when you're doing your job.
Let's see if the client does this, and let's go a bit further. If the client is really a client that's worth it, they respect your services. He does what he wants, and if I get stabbed for him, it's the same, honestly.
But when he doesn't keep the prior agreement you both have, it's no longer your responsibility.
Of course, and above all, it depends on the attitude. Cocky, the attitude doesn't matter to me. That's when you realize that this guy didn't want security. He wanted a 2-meter tall guy to show off, and for everyone to see it as a show, like saying, I'm here, and not only do you see me, but you also see who I'm with. 2 guys who are 2 meters tall, but you don't notice them? Are they just there to show off? Yes.
Is that the deal you mentioned, Jeffrey's deal?
Yes, that's what I'm telling you. Sometimes a good client can be a Jeffrey. It's no big deal. I mean, you can provide good security at a certain moment. Hey, it's happened to me too. I don't know what he sees, and if he buys, it's not a big deal. A service lasts a long time, so anything can happen, of course. But when you see that he doesn't really want security, but just wants a show, that's when it really matters. If you really like security, if what you really like is going out, being invited to eat, and taking your own pictures in places like that, well, there you go. Well, I don't criticize anything, right? But if you like security, that's when you say, what the hell am I doing?
The thing is, a lot of those people really don't need security. They do it to show off their status.
Or to try to show off, to have status, because maybe they don't have the money, or they're not dangerous, or they don't have what it takes. Having 2, 3, or 5 guys watching you isn't just about preventing theft. There are many other situations involved.
What has been the profile, without mentioning names, that you would say has truly been in the most danger? When was it? At the moment when the most security or the most dangerous or difficult has it been for you to protect a client?
Look, as I told you, I don't mention names, I don't mention house names, I don't mention client names, and I'm not going to say the time period either, but I have had a very influential person. And honestly, that job, which lasted 15 days, was one of the jobs that really put all my 15 years of work to the test, to see if I was ready to do that kind of thing or not. Because, for example, we were always on the move. I mean, the guy had a lot of money, he was being followed.
He was a billionaire.
Not much. I mean, you notice it because he bought, well, rented for 15 days during 15 days houses for 250,000 a week, all five of them. At the same time, we changed cars every day and a half, or every 6 hours, depending on the situation. We were never in any house for more than 3 hours. In every house, we had breakfast, lunch, dinner, everything, because he never knew which house he was going to be in. We were on the move all the time on the move. Sometimes not even the security knew, because he actually set up security rings, an inner ring, an outer ring, and another one that covered the houses. Even we, who were closest to him, sometimes didn't know where we were going. I mean, his movements were so well hidden that until the very last second, even inside the car while we were moving, we didn't know which house we were going to.
He could be the man they were looking for, right?
I don't want to share too many details in the end. But the truth is, the guy had a pretty tough way of life, and things were made very difficult for him for quite some time. And he was hiding in many countries for 4 or 5 months, and one of them he chose was Spain, and in Spain he chose Ibiza. And luckily, either because of who we are or the kind of work we do, well, we got to be one of them. It was my turn, and honestly, I really enjoyed working. That's because that's where you're truly a bodyguard. You really do the job. You really do advanced work. You go ahead to where he has to go. You check everything. We used to sweep the houses. Sweeping the house means making sure there were no microphones, no global positioning system, no one there. We controlled the staff, documentation, schedules, who entered any of the 5 houses, you know? We even drove around. Maybe he was in one house and we would pretend like he was leaving. We would do a fake exit so that people would believe that maybe
You were constantly playing tricks all the time,
everyone dressed alike because he claimed drones were watching us.
or everyone dressed the same.
Yeah, everyone, damn, right? Everyone was called dressed in black, all of us. All 25 of us who worked in the service, the transfers, everyone dressed in black so nobody would know who he was and who wasn't. We even looked for people who were more or less his same height.
I mean, the guy was big, so are you saying you were a decoy for the guy?
He was about 1.80 or 1.90 meters tall, and we all had to be more or less that height.
Man, you're 2 meters tall. How much exactly?
Now I'm 2 meters and 2 centimeters tall, and I weigh 123 kilos.
I mean, of course, that's important.
No one could speak his language.
No one could speak for...
Not understanding what he was saying.
I mean, it was one of the requirements.
There was an interpreter, and whenever he spoke, between him and that interpreter, they didn't talk to each other.
I mean, as soon as he had that interaction with him, it was possible.
In fact, it was completely forbidden for any of us to understand his language, so that we wouldn't know what he was saying, who he was talking to, or what he was talking about. So everything would stay secret with him.
And this kind of service, for example, costs more than a standard service.
Man, it's you know? First, because he values that service. Yeah, man. Second, because he needs it. And third, because he has the ability to pay well for everything that comes with it, or the good service. Not talking, always staying in your place. I mean, everything that comes with that in the end gets paid for. The truth is we get paid very well.
Yeah, no, that's right, very well.
And then there's the tips. I mean, that's another thing. Sometimes in this business, the tips are even bigger than the money you get for the service.
Yeah, right. A lot of people...
That's when you really notice that the customer is happy, not in what they pay you. Because in the end, it's all a set price. It's like, I don't know, when you buy a car, it costs what it costs, right? If after 10 years with the car, you never had a problem, the seller or maker will say, hey, thanks to this great car, I haven't had any problems and I haven't had to pay for repairs every 5 minutes. Well, when a customer gets really good service, they feel good, and usually they reward you with good tips.
I mean, sometimes they even double or triple the fare.
Of course, because in the end, he doesn't feel it. Many wealthy people aren't foolish. They have money because they know how to operate. Everything has a price, so you pay the usual amount. And he understands that a 12-hour service can be worth a certain amount of money, right? But if the service is really well provided and he feels very happy, that's when he says, here, I appreciate it, and they pay you either the same or less or 10 or that, and me.
But it's always there. I mean, in this world, there's always a tip.
And that's where, yes, always, always, even from him, and with all due respect, even from the one who doesn't need it, when you're taking him to the bathroom and so on, when he gives you a tip, it's 50 or 100, I don't know.
Yes, but usually,
They always give you a tip.
Aitor, I love you. Before moving on to another very important topic, I want to ask you a question. What are the best stories you can tell us here on the show from the nightlife world, from the world of security at INMIG?
As I said, the best ones are the best ones.
Or the worst ones too. Careful.
I have one about Bora that's very unpleasant, but I mean the best ones. Ultimately, what matters is how they treat you, right? In these services, the treatment is always excellent. Because in the end, you find yourself in very, very well-maintained environments. And what about the food, the accommodation, the fact that they respect your training schedule? I don't know. To me, that seems like just an anecdote. Why? Because in the end, the lifestyle that working for people like that allows you to have is pleasant, you know? And that, more than maybe getting a certain amount of money as a tip, or them trying to give you a Rolex as a gift, or being at a party where they've spent just on decorations, 2 million euros just on decorations, you know? The girls they bring are from other countries. If they don't like them, they fly them back by private jet and bring new ones from elsewhere. For me, more than that, it's the way certain clients treat you. That's what really makes you appreciate that this is a good job. More than just saying, well, I can tell you that, I don't know, maybe they spend 300,000 euros on a house. That in the house there are dwarfs, then there are doctors, there are some of the best chefs, and they bring in the best DJs. That there's everything to throw their little party, because in the end, it's a little party for 100 people. But they've spent 3 or 4 million to throw a party for 100 people, and we see that all the time. But for me, that's normal. Anecdote. It's the logical thing.
Yes, it's the logical thing within this world.
It's logical. If it isn't, it wouldn't make sense, because if it isn't, it's like a muscle. They flex their muscles.
Yes, a question. Do you think they do it because they truly want that party, or is it generally a display of status and power?
What do you think? It's a bit of both, because on your birthday, you also want your friends to be happy, because in the end, you have to distinguish these people. They only take care of friends, avoid inviting strangers, and don't charge for tickets or do anything silly. No, they're not his friends, they're his clients, because they also have their business. And it's a way to show them that life is going well for them, and that as long as things are going well, they're going to be taken care of there. What he represents, because each party says a lot about how each person is. It depends on the type of food, the kind of care, the marketing, the disc jockey, everything. It really shows the personality of that client. So it's like saying, this is my party, and this is my way of taking care of you, and this is my way of showing you who I am.
Yes, and on top of that, I'm inviting you to this event where I've spent 3 million. Feel special. That's how you build a stronger bond, right? I understand. So what's the most unpleasant thing you've experienced?
I've had people die in my hands. What do you mean? I mean, drugs are really bad, as we all know, and I've had quite a few people die in my arms. And about the dose, yes.
Do you oppose all drug use?
No, not just because of that, but because of many experiences in my life. Not just the night has left a mark on me. But, well, we all have our personal lives, and honestly, drugs have never been a part of mine. And with all this, it has left a big mark. So, during the Bora era, unfortunately, walking along the beach, finding people and taking them out, and on the way, they die on you. And that's unpleasant, very unpleasant. Because on top of that, the one I remember the most, when he died in my arms, he was with his sister and his girlfriend. When you're on the ground, you see the sister and girlfriend punching the awake guy who's covered in drool and blood. There's no way. That's very unpleasant, and it leaves a mark, but it's part of this world, part of this. Well, there are people who handle drugs well, and there are people who unfortunately don't, and there are some who lose control, others who enjoy them, right? I've seen people, and now this. But I mean, they have absolute control over the drug. Then they get their checkups. They have their IV drips. I mean, I've seen, for example, parties, well, I've seen gatherings or I've seen people's vacations. Honestly, I'm surprised by how they handle drugs. I mean, that's how it seemed to me. I would never do it always with respect, but with knowledge in a way of doing it, cleaning themselves, detoxing, and you think, damn, at least you understand it, you know? I mean, it's not the typical kid who does drugs and just gets stuck,
He gets all annoying.
who's staring at them all the time. No, 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 no. Today it's just this drug. This drug has, this is it, with this kind of music, with this kind of atmosphere, and then we clean ourselves up in this certain way, we detox. They spend 2 days doing sports, doing this with IV fluids, with special food, so the body can also cleanse itself. And after 2 days, another kind of drug, with another kind of atmosphere, with another kind of music, with another kind of, let's say, stimulant. It's always like that.
These are people who have a lot of money and a lot of resources. Yes, they are people. I mean, they're addicts. But no, of course.
But yes,
But unfortunately, it belongs to the 1%, the 99%.
they end, but you see there, huh? I mean, the idea, yes, yes.
I know you're one of the most anti-drug people I know, right?
Right.
And the fact that you're telling me this is why I'm surprised. I mean, drug addicts probably do know.
I mean, over time, that's what I'm saying. I'm an observer. I really like to watch and learn from what observation gives me. And honestly, seeing those things, you see them and you say, damn, because now I'm extrapolating a little. I'm a big follower of Escotado. Yes, for me, Escotado, Antonio Escotado is a great man. For me, Escotado has,
His son is coming soon.
here, well, I think it would be a really good, a really good podcast, because honestly, that man is a scholar to me. He has spoken very well. I mean, he has a lot of experience in what he has said. And honestly, observing them from his point of view is very interesting. And it's hard to judge because the reality is that in the end, just like me, I consider that ibuprofen is a drug. Yes, for me, for what I understand,
Sugar and alcohol are drugs too. You have to be careful since many drugs are socially accepted.
right then, to see it from that point of view and try to understand it from the perspective that that gentleman wanted us to understand. The non-recreational use, even medical use in the end, is very respectable, you know? But I'm telling you, as you get older, you start to understand certain things.
Radical anti-drug.
Like you were, I still am. That's just not for me. I mean, I would never do that to myself, but understanding it, like extrapolating a bit and not judging everything, that's not bad either. But I would never use them. That's just not for me. For me, a healthy lifestyle is what works. I respect myself a lot. I love myself a lot. And in the end, I know that drugs do end up causing problems.
I agree with that view, although I also understand that there are different ways of doing certain things in different contexts.
Like playing a lot of sports, I remember it can be similar. No, yes, actually,
Well, that's a whole different conversation. Aitor, I wanted to ask you, are you responsible for or were you involved in the biggest unemployment in European history?
yes, Ibiza is one of Ibiza.
Tell us a little about that experience. Tell us about the case. Let's go deeper into everything.
Everything. It's whatever you want. Because for me, this topic you're going to bring up is like my badge. Because there, really, just like I told you, in the service of this gentleman and so on, there, a lot of things were put to the test. A lot of experience. Because it's not a typical house job. No, it's not a hotel, but it's not just any hotel. It's a hotel that was almost like a village. I mean, no, it's not a hotel that's built up like that. It was a village, of course. There were restaurants. Your room isn't a room, it's a house.
What was it called?
Hippie market? Hippie market? Yeah, it's not a house. I mean, it's not a room, it's a house. And there were about 250 or so of those houses, restaurants, pools. There was everything, and everything was occupied. Everything was occupied. This is a service because now I have what's mine, but for 8 years I worked for the great Dani Esteve, and this is a service that came to him. And since it was Ibiza, well, obviously, Aitor, look, this is coming in. Even if you want me to go into detail, he called me 8 or 9 days before while the contract was being signed. Don't say anything, this might come in. I want to know what this is, since you're from Ibiza. I want to understand what I'm getting into and what I'm not. So, what is this? And I got to know the hippie market because it's true, it's a pretty well-known hotel. It's been around for many years, and they have a pretty famous hippie market. It attracts a lot of people, and it's really good. And I had only heard about it, and I was curious to do things right. I took the mother of my daughter, and we dressed very normally. And we went to observe. It was already occupied, and we went to observe. And honestly, what I saw made me say, this This is a challenge. This isn't easy. This isn't something normal.
How many people were in there?
Almost 800 people. Wow.
And what did you see?
A lot of caravans, dogs, an incredible smell of marijuana, bonfires, people with drums, with fire. I mean, all kinds of junkies, normal people. There was a mix of everything that made me say, wow, what happened here?
They had formed a small commune there.
I'm telling you, they were the owners of everything. They broke the fences, they wrecked everything. I usually go in. What used to be the reception was looted, completely looted. The reception, computers, everything was looted. I asked, is this happening to me? Yes. Okay, please keep quiet since the contract isn't signed yet. And the day the contract was signed, 7 or 8 days later, he called me and said, we're going all in, but I need to stop moving this little by little. So I took part of my team because within all of this, I have a company that also provides access control. We manage nightclubs. We handle a lot. We manage communities. We do everything. So I have a team of people and I told them, look, stay close. And on top of that, I didn't just pick anyone. I picked street smart people, people with a lot of experience who really know how to figure things out. They're not the type who think everything is simple.
Our friend Dimitri was there.
Maybe at that time? No, Dimitri came later. Okay, not at that time.
Greetings to Christian, who will surely watch, and to Vicente as well.
This comes years before meeting Christian. So I sent my 4 Praetorian guards, and we were taking down license plates. They hid a bit in certain spots, taking down plates, how many cars went in, which cars went out, what kind of cars, like if there were a lot of vans, RVs. Okay, just to have a little bit of context, right? And 2 days after having that information, that's when Danny comes down with his team. He asked me to put together a team and we all go there, or all at once. He even brought lawyers, a good law firm. Everything was very well done. And when we got there, we stood at the door. That's when we started to, be amazed because we're used to a lot of things. But that was unusual. I'd never seen anything like it in my life. 800 people. The type, size, and infrastructure of the hotel matched the number of people. I mean, it's a really beautiful place, honestly, because it's in a privileged spot on the island. It has great views, and that's a loophole. You can find that in a lot of places. So when we put things into context a bit, we go in. Of course, I don't remember. I mean, sorry, Danny, before going in, he made a video that went really viral where he and I were explaining the situation. And he was giving like an ultimatum that this is his service and that this is going to be vacated. He gives like 24 hours for them to leave the place on their own. It's true that with the people we had hidden there, that video creates a bit of fear. And a lot of people leave. Many, 50, 40, 60 cars left. Okay, so of course, those who resisted were already waiting for us. And when we arrived, the usual crazy fascists, this is ours. You're not going to be able to get the hell out of here, right? Against the right wing? No, they even hid 50, 50 or 100, I don't remember, because we brought 3 cars full of fire extinguishers to throw at us as soon as we came in. What about the people we left there at night? Like I told you, they've got more street smarts than a paving stone, you know? They noticed, they warned us. And at 4 a.m, we removed the 50 fire extinguishers, all the fire extinguishers that had been hidden. We took them all out. So when we came in the morning at 10 a.m., they came running to the project and didn't find us. And they said it was 1-0, we're up 1-0. So we were only able to get in at the beginning because they lined up. A lot of people, there were Italians, Dutch, there was everyone, Creoles, people, even regular people, with kids in a mine holding their hands and standing in front to block us. It was so mixed up that it didn't make much sense. We withdrew, went to court, and the lawyers filed an injunction so we could set up an access control. Because in the end, it's private property, they don't have permission to do anything there, and the owner has the right to be in charge of who enters and leaves, especially who comes and goes, right? So we sat in a circle and set up an access control with 80 people. 80 people with 16 dogs. Because in the end, an access control isn't done with all due respect. With the 4 access thugs, it's done with private security guards registered with the Ministry of the Interior with their badge. The dog must be properly trained, have civil liability insurance, and everything must be in order. They need to be professionals. You can't just put me there. You don't need to go to private security. Just request permission, specify the guard type, badge number, and their schedule. The type of dog, the dog has to be a dog that's ready in 10 minutes for what it's supposed to do. The dog has to have its vaccinations. It has to have everything. That's not a proper system. But we, with everything we had there on the island, were able to organize it in 8 or 9 hours. So we organized that access control, and that's when we started to manage things, and that's when the protocol began. That's when we began to identify who were the good ones, the bad ones, and those just there for business, renting out rooms. They were preparing the biggest rave in Europe because in the back there was something like a pool, a theater where they did their thing. And there they wanted to throw a rave like the one they've just had now in Albacete. They wanted to have a rave just like that with people from all over Europe. In Ibiza, because that was for New Year's, I mean, we went on duty in December. They were preparing all of that. So did we mess it up for them, the biggest rave in Europe? We messed everything up. We ruined everything for them. So it's true that we set up the checkpoint, we started to notice them, and they came in a group to take down the checkpoint. But since everything was legal, with police support, they understood that what we were doing, we were allowed to do it. Another thing is how we went inside, what we would do afterwards, and how we carried out the eviction. That's something that, of course, Danny did all of that. He did his job well, and then left me in charge. And he told me, every 2 or 3 hours, call me, keep me updated on everything, but you make sure this moves forward. I mean, that this moves forward or that these people get out. Both go hand in hand. So, of course, little by little, we started going in, leaving 40 guys at the door and the rest with equipment. We went little by little, going in, taking on missions, so we could understand each other. There were some vans that belonged to the property, and they wanted to get the vans back. So the first thing was to recover the vans, because in the end, if you don't let a van out, you're stealing it. So by then, we started negotiating with certain squatters so that little by little, they would stop giving us trouble. We don't need their permission for something we were already allowed to do, but so there wouldn't be any serious outbreaks of violence, okay? Because there really were some bad people. There were Italians, there was magic, there were bad people. Even so, days later, just like we found the 50 fire extinguishers days later, we found hidden harpoons for shooting fishing harpoons. The new things, nights, sneaking out at night, they broke all the street light bulbs because it's a village. So there were streets, there was everything, there were street names. You would communicate or meet up because that street back then, it was a village. So they kept messing with us, so to speak, and they messed up all the lights so that at night we couldn't go through there. So little by little, that's what I'm telling you. We started identifying vulnerable people, mafia, people who did business, shameless people, a bit of everything. We even started dividing the town, this area, that area, going door to door to figure out what was there and what wasn't, whether there was something or not. Because if there wasn't, I'm lucky, and I'd really like to mention Fran, the locksmith, who was there 24/7. Like us, we had 26 days to clear that out, and every door we knocked on, there was nobody there. The lock was automatically changed and a camera was put inside, okay? And that system drove us a bit crazy because you have to put a camera inside and monitor it in 200 houses, right? I mean, come on, of course, and put in 200 locks and change them. And of course, sometimes they set traps for us and we would knock on the door, there was nobody there, but everyone had been using the house as a bathroom for 2 days. So when you went in, you just wanted to die. Damn, those bastards did everything to us. Sometimes you think they're like animals. I'm telling you, there were signs, of course. This made me really curious, that in certain houses there was 1 or 2 chairs. They were like signs from them that we had to discover. Over time, I started noticing, let's say, the leaders of each area, because none of them spoke alone. It's like they even wanted to do something together. I set up one of these gatherings with them, which is like a meeting, an assembly. Let's have assemblies, a laid-back assembly every 2 days, assemblies, to reach agreements, because we want to stay, because this is going to be ours, because that way we can benefit, we can do something good for society. They just wanted, of course, what someone else had built, right? So they just wanted that to stay, not to leave. We would let them hold assemblies, and what we did was keep working, identifying those danger spots, especially vulnerable people, because it's true, you have to know how to distinguish within what's there. The success of that eviction is very important. It was about doing things 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Why? Because when you lay everything out clearly, we cleared out an area closer to the access control. So in 5 days, we cleared everything out, and there were about 15 or 20 houses left. We were able to really identify very vulnerable families who were there deceived, who had paid to get in. And it's true that with all the information you had, it started to make more and more sense that it was real. We moved those families close to the access control so they would be protected. For what purpose? Because they felt betrayed. The others felt that those people, by joining us, were selling out. So to protect them, we put them in the houses closest to the access control so that the guards at the access control could look after their safety and they wouldn't face retaliation from the other people who were putting on too much pressure, okay? So once we had already taken in the very vulnerable people, because we talked with social services, and social services, they helped us determine if they really had open vulnerability cases, if they had requested assistance, if they were eating at Caritas, if they had the typical Caritas card, etc., etc. And yes, we did reach an agreement about these people. We're going to leave them here for now because we're not in a hurry since this is going to be empty. So it's true that we used those 10 or 15 or 20 houses to shelter them, to keep them calm. And also so that social services could gradually work on it, but so that those people would be calm. And little by little, we started going further inside, undoing everything that was there. Well, you know, the mafias, the Italians, it was really hard for us. There were fights between them. There were fights with us. They threw harpoons at us. They hid tax at night so we would step on them. They did all kinds of nasty things to us, but we made it. I mean, in the end, how was it? How did it end? Was it epic? Yes, of course, because I want to know the end of this story. Epic, because you said that after 15 or 20 days, there was a huge change, because there were some Italians who threatened to kill us, that they were going to shoot us, that they didn't know when, that they were going to hang us, that they were going to cut us into pieces, all that kind of stuff. And the day we ran into those Italians, because they used to hide, they threatened us, but they would hide. And there was a day during one of our rounds, because we used to go everywhere, knocking on doors, analyzing, seeing who was in and who wasn't. This one has moved, this one hasn't. So at the moment we ran into them, obviously the tension rose. And they lost, so that was clear, but they lost the physical confrontation. They lost because they were bad. They were coming after us, really. So there was kind of a battle, more or less. Yeah, you don't like to go into details when the details are where the juice is. Yeah, because in the end, I'm not alone. We were a group of 80 people. It's true that we had to lift up almost 30 people from the team to deter that attack because it wasn't just 4 of them. And it's true that when everything was all messed up, the whole context, they saw, I mean, there was a part that resisted. And when they saw that those people were really bad and they came to attack, we didn't do anything. I mean, we defended ourselves, of course. It's very important to make this clear. We only defended ourselves. They were the ones who set up an ambush. They came from behind, attacked us, and people saw that. That marked a before and after, because once we won that, those 20 or 30 sons of bitches left the island. They didn't just leave the hippie market, they left the island. And those people understood that things had changed. This had changed. If the stronghold was gone, they no longer felt confident they could win. There was a mafia. They were bad. And if they could hurt us, what would they do to them? At the moment they surrendered because they convinced them not to surrender. Of course, people didn't leave with full access. It's just that once they left, they couldn't come back in. If it's that or you resist here until death, a siege, a war of attrition, so we understand clearly, it's a war of attrition. I even bought information in exchange for food. There were people who, for better or worse, lost weight. And I would grab people and say, why is that chair there? Don't worry, bring me a chicken at. I'd tell him the chicken at and ask, why is that chair there? Would you give him the chicken? He'd explain the chair is there for a reason. It's almost like a war. Do you know who this is now? I can't tell you so they don't see us together. We'll meet at this time, at this place, at this hour, so they don't see me with you, you know? And I changed my clothes. I went to talk to him. He gave me camouflage clothes. He would tip me off on the good day that Chivar would give him another chicken, or give him 5 loaves of bread, or give him 2 liters of beer. And we bought information with food because you couldn't bring food in, so they would jump over the cliff, and some of them would risk it and bring food in through the cliff. But not everyone had that craziness in their head, you know, with the crap that the Italians were holding them back to have more leverage. They didn't eat. We even started buying them food. We were actually very important. I want to emphasize this. The neighbors were everything. I mean, the neighbors brought us churros all morning. They brought us sandwiches. They brought us coffee. The neighbors from the area, I mean, because of course, because they were stealing, they would go out and steal from the neighbors 100%.
Supporting the eviction.
But to the death, even our motto was evict with the neighbors. I mean, we were one, Desokupa and the neighbors. We made a sort of mini platform and we all supported each other. So since the access controls are 24 hours, it's really exhausting and you have to be on guard. It was December near the beach, humidity, cold, rain, everything. The neighbors just kept looking out for us. They held demonstrations in our favor. They came there, stayed 2 or 3 days, applauding us, valuing our work, giving us strength. Don't leave, don't give up, be strong, hold on until the end. I mean, the neighbors were the ones who kept us going day after day, because in the end, I was there 24/7. I slept there. I'm sorry, but I slept there on the floor because everything was a mess. I slept there so I could be on alert 24 hours a day for any disturbance, any change, any house recovery, any agreement, anything, because they fought among themselves, there were disagreements, and they moved around. So all of that was constant. All those changes had to be analyzed. We had to find solutions, remedies, keep buying people off, because honestly, part of the success was knowing how to handle information really well and knowing what questions to ask and who to ask. That was very important. So here's a nuance. Once this happened, many left. The Italians left.
Once the all-out battle was over,
To our victory. 2 days later, many people left. A lot of regular people, okay? They left as if to say, now I don't have repression anymore. Now I won't face consequences from those bastards. I don't want to be here. I was here like forced, and I'm leaving because I don't want any trouble for myself, and I don't want to see these people. And now the bastard who had me here under control is gone. So I'm leaving too. So a lot of people left at that point. Honestly, those Italian bastards had.
it was an Italian mafia that controlled that, right?
Most of them, yes, because then there were about 50 or 100 who were, let's say, and I feel bad saying it, but they were very communist. And just like that,
They were the typical punks from here, Spanish.
yeah, they would stay there because they always stayed there because that belonged to a billionaire and it wasn't some cool movie and they weren't going anywhere. But when they saw all that, they also started to negotiate.
Yeah, like, hey, give me this and I'll leave. 2,000 euros?
No money, we didn't give any. The only money that was spent was for food for the family.
You didn't negotiate with money.
Never food. We didn't give a cent to anyone because they had no right to ask. We treat vulnerabilities as they are, as vulnerabilities, but to the dog,
Pero flautismo es pero flauto, correct?
not to them, because if you are, why ask for money now? No, you're not a hippie. Well, no, they didn't ask for 2,000 euros either, huh? It's true that some would say, well, if you give me some because I have rent, do you find your own food? Champ, I don't have to support something. There's a system that you're against for whatever reason. I don't have to support you like that. So those people are the ones. That is, once the Italians left, a lot of the regular people left too. We recovered almost 70% the percentage of the resort in the first 17 days, and we only had a small remainder left. Of these punks, there was no way, okay? And they kept doing their thing. They were drunk all day. They kept fooling around all day. What happened was that at night, when they weren't paying attention, we would recover houses while they were careless because they got drunk and ended up half passed out. Because honestly, that's how they were. It was something I used to say, I just don't get it. This guy would get drunk here at 6 in the evening, but really drunk, with all due respect. It's called a Colombian drunk, says Vale, where you can't even talk. You're wandering around like a vagrant, falling on the ground. You can't even walk. And I used to say, it's the afternoon, and you're this drunk. I mean, I'm not even close to that. So once they lost a bit of control in certain houses, we would take off the doors because it was cold. They would see there was no door and wouldn't go into that house, so they started isolating themselves in the houses they had more control over. Like I said, little by little, that's how we started doing things. And this is something I want to say because at one point we had practically recovered 90% of the houses in the whole resort. Was this really it? In the end, it was an owner whose name I don't want to mention. Everyone knows her. And I will never work for that lady because she's not fair, even though she's the one we made a deal with. We have this access control at this price and so on. And once we had 90% of it, we went to inform her, and there was a potential buyer who wanted to buy it. Vacant, okay? And we told her, look, there's just a little left. This is practically vacant now. We need you to start paying your part. We fulfilled our part. The phrase that stuck with me and almost led me to bankruptcy, I don't remember. Who are you? I'm helping you get back on your feet and haven't made any deals with anyone.
Huh? We got paid for that job?
Yeah, the buyer paid us for it, not the owner, because the buyer had some guts. Good for him, he understood. We called him and I said, this is what's going on, okay? We've recovered 90% of the hotel, and I don't know what to do with this lady. Is she responsible for this? I can't support 80 guys at 25 an hour, 24 hours,
And these people have to eat?
So I work. We've worked a miracle, And the guy said, don't worry. If she doesn't take care of it, you have my word. That's amazing, isn't it? No, yes, honestly, I'm telling you the truth. He said, you finish your work, finish it, and you have my word. Whatever it is, I'll put it on the table. I want that hotel, and with these conditions, that's what I want. That's why we've done everything. And in the end, with all that, we keep moving forward. And when we only had 5 or 6 people left, we went to the newspaper and gave, because of course I ordered food every day, and we already considered her recovered. We considered her recovered because the ones left were the bad people, but they still didn't know where to go. These hippie pingos, drunk every day, kept saying they were leaving, but always asked for 2 or 3 more days.
Yeah, I have no idea what
The caravan plan isn't happening. My friend is bringing me instead. I don't know the details. They're fixing a van, and I'll sleep in a car, whatever works. And then, when we considered it vacated, the neighbors threw a party. Honestly, it was all pretty intense, but for me it was a milestone because it wasn't easy at all to negotiate with so many people, It was really hard. Selecting everything in parts, dissecting the hotel. What's the vulnerable part? What's the aggressive part? What's each part? And negotiating. Even now that I found the guy who had the master key, because everyone had a lock and there was one key that opened them all. And I didn't find that guy. And I bought the key from him with a steak and potatoes.
No, nothing. They were struggling, almost like under siege. Of course,
they can leave. I can't stop them, as that would be kidnapping, but I can deny them entry. From the moment they left, they couldn't come back in. So many would say, well, I'm not leaving, of course, that's it. I'll stay here and not leave, period. But because we realized that those 30 or 40 people from the mafia who were there, they had them under strict control so they wouldn't leave.
What a crazy story, huh? Unbelievable. This happened while working with Danny.
You were Danny and I managed access control.
I mean, you were the person in charge of the area.
Of access control, yes, that's right. You were the
highest authority there.
At that time, of course, obviously, because we were the ones who set up the access control, we took responsibility for it, and we were the ones who carried it out. The National Police visited every 3 days to check license plates, ensure we followed the schedule, and confirm workers were registered. They had to do their job as we did, and since there were no problems, everything was fine. We had a lot of support, and after 26 or 27 days, we got everything back. But I'm telling you, there are many more stories to tell because that's how it was. Yes?
It's 26 days.
There are many, but that's the gist of it.
Did any of you get hurt?
Yes, that's right. I got cut in here by a bottle. Yeah, right around here with us.
So in the ambush, you got hurt. It's this scar you have here.
Right? That's from when you were a kid. A bottle cut inside. I mean, since it was all dark, they ambushed us, and one of them threw a glass bottle at me and hit me here and messed up my whole face. But those are cool war tactics.
Yeah, damn, incredible. I was going to tell you about another very famous case. It was about a girl who was an OnlyFans influencer. Our friend Christian was there for that one, right?
Yeah, Adafne, the great Adafne.
And what happened with that?
Let's see.
That was a very publicized war?
Especially publicized. Because this girl, honestly, at first she seemed one way, but then we realized she was crazy. She was really messed up. She was in a bad way. I mean, no, we did an access control because she rented that house. She wasn't paying the rent. And on top of that, she was renting out the rooms on Airbnb. What the hell? So what happened then with the owner? It's not that she was just anybody, but in the world of Ibiza, She had the misfortune of being very well known and very loved, that girl. Those owners are very noble people, very hardworking, very professional in their work. And almost everyone who works at night adores them, adores her because she's a very good person.
It's not good to mess with people who are dedicated.
Of course, because in Ibiza we have a microclimate. Ibiza is a very small town. Though it seems like everyone is up all night, we've lived there for years through every season. It's a small town where we all know each other. So, to hurt that girl, to do so much harm to her, to let her economy almost go to hell just because you want to get rich at someone else's expense, that marked us and got us much more involved. Me, Dimitri, Vicente.
Oh, of course.
Vicente was there.
The whole La Lana team was there.
All because that was an access control for almost 15 days, 24 hours a day. Those two crazy guys, Dimitri and Vicente, those two crazy guys, didn't move from the door in 15 days.
Well,
they didn't move. They only went down to pee and didn't move. And that gave us a hard time. She would scream at 3 a.m., "They have me kidnapped." I tried to make a deal with her 50 times. Let the police come. We would see each other in front of the police. Not that the police would put me in a trunk and throw me on a hill, some things. And in the end, that access control. Well, we still have lawsuits, huh? With her? Yes, not for everything. She accused me of planting a kilo of drugs in her house that wasn't there. She accused almost all of us of gender-based abuse.
And for sexual abuse.
She would call and file complaints against Toti Plen. Because she was bored, she would call, start filing complaints, and say outrageous things that made no sense and had no weight. Of course, she lost all the lawsuits, obviously, because they made no sense at all.
She also filed complaints against Dimitri?
Yes, against me and Dimitri. Just so you know.
Okay, for those of you who don't know, Aitor, Dimitri, Vicente, Alvaro Moran, my little brother, and Juanma. We were a team that spent 5 days together there, basically during the Dana, helping out and everything. So when we talk about Dimitri and Vicente, we're talking about the team that was there in Paiporta, and actually, not just Paiporta, but also Cataroja. We were in Albal, everywhere. We were all over the place. We even did patrols at night.
That's what hurts me the most.
We even patrolled at night to prevent theft and such. Even though things had settled down some, it still felt odd. Anyway, back to the lady's issue. She reported all of you for everything.
But for everything, for things that made no sense, things she could never prove. She hasn't shown up to any of the 7 or 8 trials that have taken place, not a single one. She has changed lawyers 7 or 8 times. Seriously. There's no trial because she's already changed lawyers. There's no trial because she's changed lawyers again. There's no trial because now she doesn't have a defense. That's how it is every day. I even think that now we have another one just to make sure of something. Yeah, and it's going to be just like the other 7.
Why overwhelm the judicial system when there are so many women who really need it? Yesterday I responded to that, and these women really believe they have the right to file complaints, which should be punishable.
I think that after everything that has been proven, they should have some responsibility.
They should have some responsibility, but what can't happen is giving them 7.
Everything they've reported is completely false.
It won't be considered false since they won't convict her. That's the problem, because we don't know who.
Reported her for having drugs. She had drugs in her house because, like her, she set up a system that wasn't normal. When we went to make the first visit, the one he already had as a tenant opened the door for us.
Yes, but so people have the context of the story we're talking about because it was very public. Danny made a lot of videos against her. She was a girl who had quite a few followers and had OnlyFans, right? And she had 30,000, 20,000 followers and OnlyFans. And she moved into the house of a very beloved woman in Ibiza. And then what she did was rent out the rooms.
And she didn't pay her
the rent to the owner. And that's where the team came in, correct?
First we went to negotiate. And when we knocked on the door, we didn't know the whole context. We didn't really know the context. So when we got to the door and the person inside opened it for us, he let us in. We told him what was going on, and he told us what was going on. That same guy told me, "I'm leaving here because she didn't live in that house. She didn't live there. She used it as a business. She didn't stay there."
A house to run her business, harming the owner. What madness.
She occupied the house in the modern way, meaning she didn't kick the door down.
She rented it, of course. Anyone who occupies calls it a clear contract.
But yes, in legal terms, it's more contractual. So she treated it as a business, but the thing is, for the business to actually be profitable for her, she didn't pay the rent, but she rented out rooms at 200 euros per room per week. Yeah, it's wild, because when we explained and showed him all the documents, he said, "I rented this for 5 days, but I'm leaving. I don't want any trouble. I didn't know about this." So he's the one who lets us in from inside, and when he leaves, he basically gives us the place, right? So we're there, And she calls the police and reports us for trespassing because, man, it caught her attention. Hey, you're lying to me. This isn't your house. This isn't right. I don't want to be involved in this mess. This doesn't fit with my values. It's not what I want. I'm leaving. So then, when she sees she's losing control a bit, she calls the police station. She makes up the craziest story ever, that we broke the door, that we kicked the guy out, that I don't know what else. And a patrol car shows up, of course, the patrol car, when they see her, right? They say, well, that's not the case. Why isn't the door broken? The lock is the same. The key is the one the guy gave us. They talked to the guy and he said, I didn't let them in. What are you talking about? I just let them in. They told me this story. It makes sense to me because I was already noticing strange things, so I just got out of the way. So we stayed in the common areas. We didn't go into any rooms. We just stayed in the common areas. The police officer asked if I was staying all day. I said no, but we can't say the house is recovered. That's the truth. So I don't know where she was, and the next day she showed up. Of course, you can't stop her from coming in because even if she's doing something wrong, she has a contract. And she was smart enough to keep her things in one of those rooms. So somehow she had the context of the dwelling, right? So when she goes in, it closes. And that's when we talk to poly access control. And that's when the craziness starts. That's when the craziness starts because we didn't go in. But she had drugs in her room, so the first few days she was fine because she was drinking, doing drugs, drinking and doing drugs. And through the door, she was yelling at us, saying all kinds of things. You don't know who I am, but you'll find out. I called my friends. Things are about to get crazy, but nobody showed up. To the trolls, so to speak, who aren't crazy. No, because we had the A-team. No, but the A-team is really tough, you know? I mean, they could act really tough, but they were laughing their asses off. When she started to lose touch with reality, I mean, she didn't have any more drugs, no more drinks. Everything was running out for her. She was yelling out the window all the time, bothering the neighbors, throwing things out the window. Her only contact was the window. The times I went to make a deal with her saying, I'm really hungry, I brought her food. It's a way of saying, I'll compromise if you do too, because this won't last for you. And it's a way to gradually gain her trust and for both sides to give in because every negotiation involves some form of compromise. Didn't he have a pastry, a coffee, a latte, a croissant? They kept giving him food. What's going on? He initially acted in good faith, but then exploited the situation for more resources. At one point I asked, I'm still acting in good faith, right? She would call the police and an ambulance. What do you need your diazepam for? And diazepam, she would call the ambulance in the morning, in the afternoon, and at night every day. And of course, she would go from one ambulance to another. The ambulance would let her through. They would give her her diazepam, and she would leave. I'd tell her, with so many people dying on the island, we have to call 2 ambulances daily just to give you a diazepam, these resources. And she would tell me that she can't say no. She gets a call and she has to respond to it. She doesn't know if the person is really dying or not. Then once I visit her, I check her pulse. She's very nervous, so I give her her diazepam, but I say, it's already been 4 days coming just for the same thing. She should just go out and buy her diazepam, of course. I mean, we're using our resources just to give this lady diazepam. Between the ambulance, the SAMU, 2 doctors, a nurse, the driver, and it's August. Imagine how many people must need it now in Ibiza. What happened? That on the 5th day, a doctor came and said, this doesn't work like this, right? And I said, can I speak to someone in charge? Then Dimitri called me like, they want to talk to someone in charge. Please, I could. What's going on? I'm taking this lady to the psychiatrist. She's not well. This has gone on for too long. The condition she's in, the way she's talking, I have to take her. Do you have any issue? I mean, with me, was that what we discussed? Who mentioned this? Sorry, did the doctor say there was an issue? No, no issue. You're welcome here. There's no impediment. I ask, where does it say to take her to a psychiatrist for analysis or evaluation? Really? Because the context she's in, the things she's already telling me, what we've noted from previous days, the mental deterioration she's experiencing is not suitable. So, in order to preserve the right to life and do my job well, I have to take her with me. And there's no obstacle, really. I'll put her in the shade. These gentlemen lower the shirt, whatever you want. He took her, so we called the police and everyone else. And that's it. Except in her room, where Lexo is, except where she had her room. We recovered, let's say, about 90% of the house, except for her room. She spent 4 or 5 days in the hospital and wrote a statement saying she wouldn't return to the house. that legally we would have our arguments and our regrets, but that was it. It was like she gave up and wasn't going to go to the house anymore, but she still had her things there. Damn, how do you get a notary? That's the thing. The wear and tear on the owners is brutal. Nah,
It's crazy. There's no way to handle it.
a notary where she, after giving up that residence, didn't terminate or sign out of the contract, but did make a statement that she wasn't going to come back anymore, and that she didn't want to come back, and that she was leaving it behind just to avoid more problems. A notary where the boxes were registered, everything was recorded, nothing was touched, nothing was stolen, and where they were stored for a certain period of time, so that she, whenever she wanted, could get her things back, because she just had a few things. I mean, shoes, clothes, all party clothes. There was nothing but little outfits, boots, high heels, and that's it. There was nothing else. And it's true that now, since she brought up the topic, there were a lot of bags, really, a lot of bags. I mean, how did they take them all? She didn't have time to clean up or anything, and there were a ton of little bags. There were so many.
Or was she a girl who was really messed up in the head? The problem is that I see they feel empowered enough by the laws we have to do these kinds of things without there being a quick solution. I mean, why can't she be taken out of there? Out of the...
Look, after many years dealing with this issue, okay, after talking to a lot of lawyers, a lot of legal experts, a lot of people who really understand the law, I honestly think that the law is well made up to a certain point. The problem is the speed. Okay, and then the Bank of England, the bureaucracy behind it prevents the law from really doing its job. But for me, the law is well made. The problem is that it's not fast, it's very slow, because if you report a squatting and have a quick trial the next day
they're out.
theoretically, that's how it should work. Everything is presented and it's clear it's a squatting case, so the judge has the authority to decide. Of course, you're talking about a squatting case on January 1st and the trial is on May 14th. Tell me about it. Just tell me during all that time.
You can ruin an entire family.
Of course, during that time, what do? That family lost their house, someone profited from it, and
They could have trashed the house. It's usually like that, I'm telling you.
I'm telling you, 90% of the houses we recover are completely trashed, really trashed and robbed. But I wonder, who raised this person?
They sometimes act like animals.
It's even worse.
That's true.
I have a dog and no.
It's also true that there are cases of squatting, and I'm going to tell you about one case.
Yes.
Some friends of mine saw a mansion. I'm not going to say the name. And there were a bunch of kids inside partying, spray painting, and all that. And they said, what? Was it turning into a brothel? They went into this house, took it over because there was no one there, cleaned it up, kept it. And then when people showed up, they had to give it back. But at the end of the day, that house would have been completely destroyed if they hadn't gone in. The problem is that this shouldn't be allowed here. I mean, what I think is that things should be handled much more easily. I mean, much more quickly.
I give more tools to the police officer because he's the first one to deal with the situation, the first to interpret the case, and the one with the least resources to find a solution. Everything is open to interpretation, not by police, but by the courts. It's all up to the judge's decision. But the police officer needs to have the ability to see, decide, and act. But unfortunately, the police officer doesn't have that power. The police officer just interprets and tells you, go to court. But the police officer can see if there's a break-in, if there's a squatting, if there's a major crime or a minor crime, there's prostitution, there's drug dealing, there are signs. Because now that you've mentioned this to me, in Ibiza, we had a case, a farmhouse, because in Ibiza, there are lands that aren't considered sanctuaries, but they're like agritourism places, right? You have to take care of the environment where the pine trees are, the irrigation area, which is very old, preserve all of that a bit, and occupy a house like that. They were cutting fentanyl inside.
Damn.
We arrived, knocked, and a guy with glasses, a mask, and pants came out.
And you can't go in there?
Of course, it's no problem. You call the police, and they see the same thing. They see the same thing I see. They're cutting drugs. It's a sign that I can't confirm. How does a guy come out in August with glasses, some fingers, and gloves? And it smells like chemicals here. So what more signs do you need? See the kilo, see this, see the kitchen, see whatever. Of course, you're not going to see it because you're behind a wall, but do you get what I was trying to say? So, it's crazy. For me, the police don't have enough tools or judicial support. Because what makes me the angriest when I talk about this with my police friends is when they tell me one thing when they're in uniform and another when they're not.
I've already interviewed a police officer here, and he literally told me there was rot inside, that they're not interested as long as they get their paycheck, and that's it, right?
Yes.
I mean, the less trouble they have,
The better, but it's not a calling.
he's not a cop.
Sure, but they're worth less the less trouble they have. So become a street sweeper, don't become a cop. I totally agree with you because in the end, a cop is there to defend the interests of the citizens, not just to get a paycheck.
Aitor, to wrap things up, I want to touch on two topics. One is, describe to me the profile of someone who can be successful in the world you've chosen, the world of private security. What qualities does a person need to have to work in and succeed in that sector?
First, values. They need to have very well defined values and they have to love the work they do. I mean, you need to have a gift for protecting people to feel that part of your way of life is knowing how to protect someone because that's very important. If you don't have that calling, you'll get bored eventually, so you really need to have a vocation for it. A very high sense of protection, strong values, because if you don't have values, you can't be in this world. And above all, let's say you have to take good care of your mind and body because the mind and body are very important in order to provide really good service. If you're not in the right place and you don't have very good physical condition, obviously you can't do this job.
But for example, is it necessary to be 2 meters tall? Is it necessary to bench press 150 kilos?
No? Yes, having a good physical presence is very important. It's true that a guy who's 1 meter 50 can do a very good job, right? But in the end, a good one.
A guy who's 1 meter 50.
Yes, because in the end, a lot of it is up here. It's about knowing how to read, interpret what's happening around you, and you don't really need that either.
Damn, but look at the two guys on the team with Vicente. Hey, Vicente is a bit shorter than me, but of course he weighs 110 kilos. He's a beast like that, and he does jiu-jitsu. He's a black belt.
That's our job. In the end, it's not about confronting. Our job is to avoid it.
Of course, but how do you dissuade? How do you avoid it?
Like I'm telling you, not physically, no, but in a good security team, there's not just one, there are many. So each one has to have a gift, has to have a characteristic. And for me, having a guy who knows how to read the environment, whether he's 1 meter tall or 10, is very important.
Even more important?
Correct, since each will contribute something unique. One will add what you mentioned, physical strength. He says, sir, I'm coming closer. And another warns, watch out for the one on the corner. I can feel his vibe, right? Or I've seen him 3 times, or I've noticed that this car has passed by twice, or I've noticed, you know what I mean? Or that awareness of your surroundings and knowing how to read the environment is almost more important than knowing how to fight, because in the end, we don't actually fight. We avoid a fight, we avoid a confrontation, or we avoid a clash. That's the real job of security, not letting it get to that point. There are times when it's unavoidable because of things you can't control. There's a clash, okay? And for that clash, you have to be physically prepared to win it. Reading it right, but a good security job, excellent service, is to avoid it, interpret it, read it, and know not to run away, but to know how to get out in time.
That's the most important thing.
Running away is for cowards, but knowing how to get out in time is a good job because you don't have to make the client face anything, nor do they have to be seen. Why? Because normally the personalities of these people are very normal. They don't like confrontation, they don't like nervousness, they don't like aggressiveness, they don't like tense moments, they don't like shouting, they don't like seeing that you have to put someone to sleep, they don't like seeing those things. So perfect service, elegant service, and professional service is knowing how to avoid reaching that point, which for me is very important. More than being a black belt in jiu-jitsu, which is very useful because at a certain moment you might need it. It's never bad to have someone who can tie someone up in 5 seconds.
But for example, a person who has the physical presence but doesn't have control of the environment is not suitable. But at the same time, a person who has control of the environment but doesn't have the physical presence, is it valid or not, you see?
Both are valid, but the thing is you should try to have both because if not, it's like the graffiti artist, right? If you have imagination but you don't know how to use the spray, then in the end, what's the point of having imagination for your graffiti? And then if you can't make a straight line, right? So within your professionalism, you have to try to have both. Obviously, you can't choose to be born 2 meters tall, but you can focus on knowing how to interpret and read the environment. You can focus, but you still have to take the test your job gives you and know where you need to be. And say, I'm not here to look at the ground because you see a lot of people who are looking at the ground, they're on their phones, right? You have to be working your mind and working your surroundings to know how to interpret. I often mention this. I recently discussed with a client how important it is to know if someone is right or left-handed.
Handed.
Yes. Because for example, I'm here with you, you're my client, and I don't like that person. There's something I don't like. So what I'm trying to do is figure out if it's right or left. Why? If you're holding a glass with your right hand and not planning to do anything, your good hand is occupied just because you're looking at the glass. But if your intention is to do something to me, you'll keep your good hand free. So you'll drink with your left hand to hide your good hand, trying to distract me and act normal, pretending you're not up to anything. So to blend in, you're drinking, right? Like everyone else. We've talked about a nighttime setting, right? So you drink with your left hand. Why? That way your right hand is free if you want to take my wallet or watch. So it's very important to notice if someone smokes, if they have a vape, if they greet you with one hand to say, this person is right-handed, but they're trying to trick me. Why? To keep their good hand free to do something to me. Thank you for watching the video.
To finish last topic, were you Vito Quiles' security in Valencia? Was it a complicated job or not? Was it?
In part, yes, of course. Obviously, with all the commotion he brings, all the confrontation there is, at certain times it was difficult. I mean, it wasn't extremely dangerous, not at all. It's true that we did have some attacks. They threw eggs at us, they threw stones at us, that's true, but it wasn't a very...
That service wasn't paid, that service was because of my values.
Because all things considered, at a certain point, I think it's good that he wants to give perspective that universities are used for what they're used for, not for what they really are. And exposing all that the way he did, and calling out the other side to their face the way he did, seemed like a good thing to me.
You don't like communists?
No. When the doctor asks about allergies, I say yes to communists. What big habit have you seen?
Well, Aitor, this has been an interesting talk. You said you'd never done this before, but honestly, you have a real gift for communicating. You've told some pretty complex stories from point A to point Z in an exquisite way. You do it very well. I've really enjoyed this talk. I have a lot of affection for him and for the whole team. This program is dedicated to everyone who was there during the Dana and also to all the people of Valencia. And if you want, before we finish, damn, what a wild experience we had in Valencia, right?
It's just that few people saw what we saw, or those who did saw it all at once. But it surprised me and shocked me because I went the day after, right after everything happened, the day after. I did.
I went 2 days later with a team, stayed for 2 days, returned to Madrid and said I needed to go back.
Something similar happened to me when I left Ibiza. I'm from Valencia, but have visited Ibiza for years. For me, don't criticize my homeland. That sparked some debate. I saw an attack on my homeland. I saw that they opened it up and that it was done a bit on purpose. That's how I see it, because with everything that's happened,
I see it that way too.
I understand that they opened the tanks, they opened the reservoirs, and they did that without warning.
Without anything. Or watch out because they might open, maybe they're going to break.
Maybe that's just how they work, right?
It doesn't matter the
population, you need to have a protocol, you need to know which areas are more prone to flooding or where, okay? And do you fit in there? But I felt that it was an aggression, it was an attack on your town, and somehow we had to be there. And we were there day and night, because I went with the intention of just staying for the day, because I was only going to bring water, diapers. I spent everything I could, because I'm not rich, not at all, but everything I could I spent on water, on diapers, on food, non-perishable items, since you understand some of the context. But then people started writing to us saying that they were beating up the elderly and looting houses. But I barely use social media, but on Instagram I was getting bombarded. Aitor, since you work in this, please, Aitor, you have to find a solution. Aitor, you have to help with something. Aitor, you have to do something. This is serious. My neighbor, I don't know who, my cousin, my grandfather. And so I said during the day, we helped a lot. And honestly, I loved meeting you in that situation. And I loved how we moved around with the pickup truck. Damn, maestro, yes, yes, yes.
We did some wild things, huh? I always say we look like a paramilitary team out there.
You know what happens? Also, in a way, since we were wearing green shirts, people thought we were military because there was so much chaos. Because the first days there, I didn't even know who was in charge or if anyone was in charge or which street was closed, so nobody knew anything. No, people just wanted help, 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 and help. Please help me.
Yes, but people don't really get it when I tell them it was crazy. How did we move around there? I remember you told me, Jota, you're acting like a whore. See,
I keep thinking about it.
it was just so crazy because we even had a siren.
A beacon, you know?
We had a beacon, we put it right here and there wasn't.
They wouldn't let us through. They would let us through.
They would let us through. Everyone would do this.
Firefighters, police, local police, or the civil guard would move people aside, urging them to go through.
It's true that we were always carrying things. We went everywhere helping out. I mean, we were there and we were in contact with Ruben Gisbert. We were in contact with several control points and we were also managing liters and liters of water. I mean, it was crazy.
The chaos, all the shovels and supplies we carried, and the grateful people. Please, we need it. I don't know what. We would go all the way out there. That's why we would pick that up to take that broom or whatever to that family.
Were you also in the caravan in Cataroja when we made a caravan of about 15 cars like that?
I think it was.
Yeah, you arrived that night, that's true, but it was crazy because people were saying, but what do we do? What do we do? And the people from the non-governmental organization, they told me, you can't come in here and take things. And I was like, what do you mean I can't come in and take things? Excuse me? I have 4 cars ready with 4 pickups. We'll drive to the back so they don't have to walk and we'll take them. I've already checked what they need. You're going to give me what I want and stay quiet. I was here yesterday and the Red Cross guy gave it to me. What am I supposed to sell with that? Ultimately, everyone found out the Red Cross did profit from all that. That's why I treated them that way. I was very suspicious. No, there's an order to this. This has to go out. Sorry, this has to go over there. Keeping it stored here does nothing. It has to go over there. Bleach. People want to wash bottles of bleach. A lot of people. What if it's a caravan?
At first, you have to understand what that is. The lack of coordination, the isolation caused by the state of the area, because they isolated them, because damn, I don't want to open up percussion. But when there's an earthquake in Morocco, we send the best we have there and right at our own doorstep. This happens and it takes 5 days for an army that's just 2 hours away to arrive.
Yeah, and what's worse, now they deny that help took too long, they just deny it.
Not us, the one who had the car in Siemalago.
It's true that when we went like 4 days later, I mean, when you and I met up and we were there, some time had already passed, but at the immediate moment, there wasn't even any information. And what I saw was a bunch of soldiers. What I saw there was a lot of people who were desperate, who came out of the barracks as civilians saying, I'm here, I work for this. They were outraged. There was massive outrage among everyone who was there.
Now, extrapolating a bit, you realize the greatness of what Spain is. Yes, what we Spaniards are, the Spaniards. What I don't understand is how we're letting this country get to this point, knowing who we are, and what we're capable of doing.
That still outrages me.
Come on, don't bring politics up with me, because then no.
Remember to pay this, I know.
But for me, Adana, just like Adana, many situations and disasters have happened. It makes me realize the greatness of our people, the abilities we have, and that's where I understand less and less. How are we allowing our motherland to be violated like the homeland?
Because the worst of Spanish society is prevailing, that's the bad part. We have to get back to what's most positive, most honorable, what has the most principles, what has the most values, and unfortunately, we've completely strayed from who we are. There's a large part of Spanish society that doesn't know what our values are.
Don't you think they're doing it on purpose?
I think it's a truly deliberate plan for, them. The war of Marxism and, well, maybe not Marxism, but the war of progressivism, of postmodernism, is to attack the root of Spanish society. And the root of Spanish society can never be separated from Catholicism. That's the real problem. That's the issue. And look, I get it. If you don't believe in Christ, I don't care. It doesn't affect me. But what you can't do is separate Spain from Catholicism. You just can't do that. The festivals in your town are probably for Saint Teresa or for some other saint.
Everything is about the town of San Pascual.
Well, all of that has something to do with the Catholic Church. This country is built
on those pillars.
On those pillars, you can't, under any circumstances, blow up those pillars because you get what we have today.
Even, to put it nicely, the revolt happens because they attack Christianity. They try to kill all the nuns, all the priests. They empty the churches. They burn them all. Does that mean they're touching the sacred? What gives us an identity? Because in the end, being Christian gives us a certain identity and values that are untouchable, just like you're saying. And I understand why they try to attack them, because that's where they can make us disconnect from what really matters. Because Spain, for me, it's not just about what we represent, but also what we did for the rest of the world. We brought everyone up to date.
Yes, what we accomplished in the Catholic world. Watch out, the most influential woman in the history of humanity.
And I have it tattooed right here. Yes, I have her signature here, the Queen. For me, Isabel is.
For me too, and for Jesus Medina, the Hispanist, and for the whole group of Hispanists, also Isabel.
The Catholic. She is totally Spain. She is the one who completes everything and then gives us what we are today. Yes.
We have to reclaim those values. Aitor, and now really the last thing. What are your priorities in life?
Phew, after 38 years in this industry and this lifestyle, I've learned quite a lot. And right now, my priority is my daughter, myself, my family. I really like to dream, to fulfill my dreams, and above all, to work. And above all, in that order, it's very important, after everything I've learned, that this is the right order. Because it hasn't always been like that. Because it's always been my work, my clients, and that's it.
Aitor, it's been a real pleasure having you here and seeing you again. We'll probably do more things because I have to bring you onto social media because your hidden talent can't stay buried, okay? You're a great communicator and I appreciate you coming. Any final words for the audience?
Nothing, I just hope you all enjoyed it. I'm not sure if in the end, as this gentleman shows, I did a good job conveying what I could, what the two of us wanted to talk about. I feel really comfortable, I really enjoyed this experience, and I still think you're a bit crazy. Meeting you during the Dana situation showed me your human side, which I really liked. And that's what today, after I've been baited a lot, because just like you want me to be here, they've thrown a lot of bait at me. Having seen that human side of you is what has made me, in the end, make a decision and be the first with you. Because I feel very comfortable, and above all, with people who have these kinds of values, I really like it.
I feel very honored, Aitor.
And that's it.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Aitor. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this show. I was very eager to do it. Give me a like, subscribe to the channel. You support me a lot. And above all, Viva España. As always, see you in the next episode of The Factoria. Ciao.